Hello everyone, welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we will hear a story full of challenges, surprises, and deep lessons about perseverance, patience, and how to face unavoidable conflicts in life. Today's story will take you through an unexpected situation. The destructive behavior and hostile attitude of the 21-year-old daughter of the former tenants. Although she may have found a new place to stay and clearly knew that the new family had the right to buy the house, she still chose to stay in the house and cause trouble, destroying property in an attempt to force the new family to cancel the sale. If you find this story interesting and filled with meaningful lessons, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to learn more valuable lessons. A house full of people like Karen, who want to destroy the house because they were evicted. I, 27 years old, female, and my husband, 29 years old, male, after 3 years of hard work and perseverance, were finally able to make our dream come true, owning a house in the Pacific Northwest, where we always dreamed of building our home. This was an unforgettable moment, but I apologize if this post isn't perfect in grammar, as English is not my first language and I'm writing on my phone, which makes things a little harder. However, I felt the need to share our story in the hope that those going through similar journeys can understand and empathize. The house we found was not just an ordinary house, but our dream home. However, the unfortunate part was that the house was still being rented, and their lease was about to expire. Furthermore, the landlord, who was older and wanted to find a long-term solution for his property, decided to sell the house rather than continue renting it out. This decision was not easy for him, but he understood that it was necessary to resolve his own financial and life issues. The landlord notified the tenants about the house being sold within the next 18 months, asking them to leave unless they wanted to buy the house for $50,000, paying monthly installments. This was a good offer, especially considering they had lived in the house for 15 years. However, the tenants' reaction was not what we expected. They declined the offer to buy the house and instead gave the reason that they didn't want the responsibility of ownership and maintenance, and felt that renting would be more comfortable. Our feeling at the time was confusion, not understanding why they didn't seize this opportunity, especially when the landlord had offered such an attractive price, only 1/8 of what we had to pay, and just 1/12 of the house's actual value. After 18 months, when the notification period ended, the landlord listed the house, and we officially signed the purchase agreement. At that point, we only had 4 months left to complete the transaction, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. However, we could never have expected that the issues with the former tenants would become much more complicated. Of the 5 tenants, 2 decided to leave, but the remaining 3, a married couple and their 21-year-old daughter, decided to stay until the sale was finalized. This not only made us worry about the house being damaged, but it also made our mood more tense than ever, as we knew that this house had been loved and attached to them for so long, which could lead to unpredictable problems. We couldn't shake off the anxiety about how they would leave and whether there would be any resistance to the transfer of ownership. Although the contract had been signed and the closing date was approaching, the insecurity was always present. However, we tried to stay strong and kept faith that everything would be fine. And then, the real story began with challenges we couldn't have anticipated. We had carefully prepared for the home inspection, something we knew was an important step in completing the sale. Prior to that, we had notified the tenants about it and gave them a week to prepare. Despite some concerns, we still hoped that the house would be kept in good condition, at least during this period. However, when the inspector arrived, the situation was not only not what we expected, but it was far worse than we had imagined. As soon as we entered the house, we couldn't believe our eyes. All the areas we hoped would remain intact were severely damaged. The fireplace, one of the house's special features, was completely destroyed. Cracks on the surface and debris scattered across the room made us feel like we were stepping into a wrecked house. The HVAC system, one of the essential elements that kept the house comfortable, had been ruined. Furthermore, the electrical wiring and plumbing had not been properly maintained, making everything chaotic. The floor, which we had admired for its luxury and durability, was now dirty and severely damaged. Stains, abrasions, and cracks on the floor made us feel not only disappointed but also very angry. To make matters worse, there were tears and holes in the carpet and walls. The carpet, once part of the cozy living space, had turned into a mess, while the walls had large holes, seemingly from an accident or deliberate action. But perhaps the most concerning thing was the garden hose, which the tenants had left open, causing water to flow into the space beneath the house, resulting in severe damage we hadn't expected. The house, instead of being a place we hoped to start a new chapter in life, now looked like a battlefield. Everything was a mess, with no order or care left. We felt like the effort and money we had invested were about to go down the drain in disappointment. These damages were not just material losses but also an invasion of the dreams we had nurtured for so long. Fortunately, the inspector had noted every detail of the damage. These meticulous notes were not only essential evidence for handling the legal situation later on but also a clear reminder of the tenant's irresponsibility and negligence. This evidence would help us protect our rights in discussions with the landlord, and if necessary, it would serve as a solid foundation for claiming compensation for the damages we had to endure. However, at that moment, we couldn't help but feel extremely frustrated and wonder whether all our efforts were worth it. After receiving the notice that they had to move out, the former tenants, especially the couple and their 21-year-old daughter, reacted strongly. One of the main reasons they gave was that the house held immense sentimental value for them, particularly for the daughter, who had grown up there and experienced many childhood memories. This left us quite confused, because while they had their own reasons, their request seemed unrealistic. They hoped the landlord would extend the lease for some more time, which they felt was a reasonable request, considering how much the house had become an integral part of their lives. At that moment, we felt helpless and uncomfortable, as we understood their attachment to the house, but we couldn't accept such an unreasonable demand. The landlord, though somewhat hesitant and unwilling to hurt the tenants' feelings, had to face a difficult decision. Although he understood that this place held many memories, especially for their daughter, he had to acknowledge the reality: the house had not been maintained properly for a long time, and the damage caused by the tenants was undeniable. After some thought and consideration, the landlord firmly decided to reject their request for an extension. He explained that the contract had been signed clearly and that no changes could be made. Moreover, he pointed out the damages they had caused during their tenancy, which made us feel that the landlord had acted rightly. However, the tenants did not accept this rejection easily. They continued to complain and lament that they had been living in the house for 15 years and thus deserved to stay, or even own the house. They felt entitled to either continue living there or, at the very least, to buy it at a reasonable price. They kept insisting that, during all those years, they had taken care of the house and didn't deserve to be treated this way. This created a great deal of tension for us, as we understood their attachment to the house but also realized that their reasons were unconvincing. After hearing their complaints, the landlord simply replied with a short but firm statement: "Sorry." This sentence conveyed both sympathy and coldness, a clear declaration that his decision had been made and could not be changed. While he felt some regret, he knew there was no other way. Extending the lease or offering them the opportunity to buy the house would only complicate the situation further, as he could not overlook the obvious damages the house had suffered during their time there. In the end, the landlord stood firm against the unreasonable demands and rejected all the complaints, which, while difficult for everyone, was unavoidable. While we felt some sympathy for the former tenants, we understood that in such situations, a clear and fair decision was the most important thing. When the tenant couple finally decided to leave after the landlord issued eviction papers, we thought everything would end smoothly. However, an unexpected situation occurred that we were completely unprepared for. Instead of leaving decisively like others in this situation, they left their 21-year-old daughter behind in the house. This left us feeling confused and uncomfortable, as although the daughter wasn't listed on the lease, her presence complicated the situation even more. The daughter, perhaps deeply dissatisfied and frustrated with her family's predicament, made a surprising request that left us completely stunned. She asked that when we officially purchased the house, we could let her stay as a roommate, and even requested that her name be added to the list of owners. It was an entirely unreasonable request, but in that moment, we didn't know how to respond and felt unable to reject it outright. Nevertheless, we decided to firmly decline, as we could not accept adding her to the ownership contract, especially since she had no legal rights to the house. Rather than understanding and accepting our decision, she became extremely angry and couldn't control her emotions. She blamed us, saying that we were the ones who had taken away the house she had considered her own. For her, the house was not just a place to live but an inseparable part of her life and memories. She continued to criticize us, claiming that we had made her leave a place she had lived in for many years. These accusations made us feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, we felt some regret, because we understood that she had a deep emotional connection to the house, even though that couldn't change the fact that we had legally purchased the home and the decision could not be altered. However, as the daughter expressed her disappointment, we also realized that her requests, though stemming from her emotions and personal loss, couldn't change our decision. We tried to explain that we understood how she felt, but staying in the house or becoming an owner was not something we could accept. The request to be a roommate or have her name on the ownership contract was impossible, as we already had our own plans for the house. Though we sympathized, we could not let emotions influence our rational decision. She continued to blame us, and throughout the conversation, we could clearly feel that her anger and disappointment only escalated the tension. For her, the loss wasn't just about a house, but about a part of her childhood that she didn't want to let go of. But for us, owning this house was a dream fulfilled after many years of waiting and effort. Still, we understood that this was a difficult and potentially painful situation for both sides. We couldn't change the past, but we hoped that time would help her move on from these feelings, though at that moment, everything seemed difficult and full of contradictions. I tried to be understanding and explain that I knew this was her childhood home, but also emphasized that they had every opportunity to buy it and did nothing. These opportunities had been clearly offered by the landlord long ago, and they had declined. However, she disagreed and told the landlord she would fight with the Veterans Administration, VA, to reclaim our mortgage loan and force us to pay for her loan because she believed we owed her, as we were veterans. Although we were confused by this demand, we decided to ignore it and not focus on such unreasonable threats. We thought everything was over, but just a month before the deal was supposed to close, she caused trouble once again. When the appraiser and inspector arrived, she locked herself in the master bedroom and refused to come out. Only after the landlord gave her $50 to encourage her to leave did she finally exit the house. However, when the inspector entered, the scene that greeted them was an unimaginable mess. Clothes and trash were piled everywhere, pizza boxes stacked high like mountains, and the stench of rotting food forced the inspector to wear a mask. The house at that point resembled a heap of rubble. Nevertheless, the inspector completed the job, and the landlord replaced and repaired all the damages according to the list provided, amounting to $52,000, except in the master bedroom. Last week, when we were preparing to close the deal, the daughter finally left. But it turned out she had already found a new apartment and was deliberately trying to damage the house to force us to cancel the deal. With no other option, the landlord hired professional cleaning services to clean and disinfect the room. It took 4 days to handle everything. When we received the keys and inspected the house, we discovered that she had vandalized the drywall in the master bathroom, put screws into the garbage disposal, and even crushed the garage door opener after the previous landlord had reset the code. She even left a note demanding we return the security deposit as compensation for the damage, despite the fact that the previous landlord had fully refunded this amount to her parents when they left. This situation left us feeling frustrated and shocked by the hostility and destructive actions of the former tenant. However, we understood that this was a personal but rather an extreme reaction from someone unwilling to accept change and the reality of life. Trying to cause trouble and blame us couldn't change the fact that the house now belonged to us, and we would continue our new life there. After all the challenges and stress we had gone through, we realized that in life, sometimes difficult and emotional decisions are unavoidable. Owning a house, although a long-held dream, also comes with new responsibilities and unpredictable situations. This story taught us that it's not always possible to please everyone, especially when there are conflicting interests and emotions. However, we also learned that in such situations, it's essential to be firm and maintain principles, while also offering sympathy and understanding. As for the 21-year-old daughter, we understand that her loss is significant and that letting go of a piece of her childhood tied to the house can be very painful. However, she needs to understand that in life, not everything we want can become a reality. We hope that she will find peace and continue to build a new life elsewhere, while also learning that sometimes, accepting changes and moving forward is necessary for growth. The advice for anyone in a similar situation is to always remember that decision-making in difficult situations requires patience and determination. At the same time, always respect legal commitments and strive to resolve conflicts peacefully and civilly. Don't let emotions take over, but instead, approach every issue from an objective perspective to make the best decisions for yourself and those around you.